Hi everyone. As promised, I am just going to create a short video of myself talking about the few sides that we weren't able to get to in class this week. So the place we ended off was right before these three other stress theories, so I will outline each of these for you briefly. The first one is the life events theory. This theory connects directly to that stress survey I was telling you about that you can take online. It was created by Holmes and Rahe, and essentially what it means is that your stress arises as a result of life events that you're experiencing, and stress actually develops if you don't have resources available to deal with those life events. Some of them are more stressful than others, but the underlying factor here is that there just aren't enough resources available to deal with it, and that's what results in stress. The next one is the hardiness theory. So somebody who's hardy is someone who looks at a situation and perceives it as not very stressful. So it's basically their attitude toward that event, and usually it's they perceive it as less stressful than somebody who isn't hardy would perceive it. So, for example, somebody who's grown up in a really violent sort of war-stricken country will have seen a lot of terrible things as they've grown up and being raised. So if they, say, for example, move to somewhere with less war, like less violence and war, such as Canada, not that there's no violence, but there's much less war going on here. If they see something horrible happen, it won't affect them as much as it might affect those of us who have grown up here and haven't been exposed to those horrible events. So they've almost developed a thick skin, and they don't feel the stress that we may feel in that sort of situation. The violence in war is just one example. Like, you can become hardy to all the different types of stress that exist depending on what your background and where you've come from. The third one is the social support theory, and this one basically enlightens the fact that, as individuals, we hope to have some sort of support network, whether it be your family, friends, peers, or a combination of all of them, that you rely on to help get through situations. Not that you have to have like some sort of powwow and talk to them about your stress, but just when you feel like venting or looking for advice on something, you have that support system to turn to. So this theory ultimately says that somebody who experiences stress is just not receiving sufficient social support for responding to that event. I'm not necessarily saying it's the society's fault or anything, but just that person hasn't developed a strong enough support network. So when they go through a life event, they have no one to turn to, or not enough support to turn to. So those are the three stress theories. This slide basically is just a preview to something we're going to touch on next week, and it's the relationship between the nervous system, endocrine system, and the immune system. And basically just describes that, like, when you're stressed out, you're actually lowering your immune system. Your immune system is the system that protects you against, disease and illness. And if you're stressed out, it just can't function at its optimal level. And therefore, that's why stress is linked to disease. So we'll be talking about that next week. This is just a bit of a preview, but it is essentially a theory as well, and that's why it was added to this PowerPoint. So basically, what you'll be doing online this week, I've put you into your success teams online, and you each have a discussion board related to either having low stress or high stress. And what you're asked to do is just brainstorm characteristics. They could be personality characteristics, cultural background, genetic related characteristics, gender characteristics, or personal experience type things. You're just brainstorming things that fit into each of those categories. So if you've been assigned low stress, you just in your group are going to be brainstorming characteristics that you consider low stress characteristics, and some groups will be assigned high stress, and they'll be doing the same thing for that. I will be collecting all those characteristics that are brainstormed and creating a culminating sort of piece of work to post on DC Connect for everybody to see. But in the meantime, I'd just like you to do that brainstorming activity, and that discussion board is available until next Wednesday at 5 p.m. So you'll need to make sure you at least contribute in some way before that time. As we talk about characteristics, this PowerPoint actually gives you some good ideas that you can draw from to add to your brainstorm. So, for example, this slide is all about the different personality types, A, B, C, and D, and characteristics that fall in those personality types. So if I just, for example, look at type A, and a person with type A personality is super competitive, very controlling, impatient, aggressive, hostile in situations. So if you can imagine this type of person facing a stressor, and this is generally these are some of the ways that they'll react to that stressor, this would be considered a high stress individual. Whereas if we look over to type B, then this is the type of person who's more relaxed. They have a higher tolerance for things. They like to contemplate and just sort of reflect, and they don't react drastically or too quick. So these are all considered low stress type characteristics. And so type B personalities are more low stress individuals. And then as you can go through and read the rest here. So for type C and type D and their associated characteristics, and you can just decide in your mind whether you believe they're low or high, and use some of these terms, if you will, in your brainstorming activity for low and high stress low and high stress characteristics. So again, this basically was just where I was going to talk again about some personality traits, and how they determine how a person would cope with stress. So if we go back to hardiness again, I've already explained what that is in terms of the theory. So again, a person who has a hardy personality is someone who basically views potential stressors as challenges and opportunities for growth and learning. They usually react less intensely to stress, and there's something called an inner locus of control, and that means that a hardy person feels like they have more control over their life than somebody who's less hardy. So that just expands on that again. Resilience is another personality trait that enables somebody to deal with stress better. So resilience basically applies to somebody who experiences social and academic success, even though they're in an at-risk population. So these are the low-income people with mental or physical disabilities. So they have, they're in an at-risk population with major challenges, yet they still are resilient and are able to achieve the success that they're required to achieve. And it also relates to emotional intelligence. And these types of people are known to set goals and face adversity through individual effort. So just a couple personality traits that relate to people that deal with stress successfully. The next two slides are talking about the difference between women and men and how they're differentiated in terms of their levels of stress. So reasons why women would maybe experience stress would be they find themselves balancing multiple roles more often. So as a student, spouse, parent, and so on. So they juggle a lot of different roles, which can cause stress. And when you combine all these various pressures, it ends up causing high stress. And this is just, again, not every woman, but just as a general group, women tend to be quite high stress level. They often cope with their stress in quite unhealthy behavior. So believe it or not, many women who are stressed find themselves overeating or taking prescription medication, which these are not healthy behaviors for coping with stress. And women are, found to do that more often than men. And finally, the fact that women have oxytocin, which is a hormone, it's the one that's involved in pregnancy, and it's also for developing the breasts and also giving birth. So because they've found connections between this hormone, oxytocin, and the likelihood of women to seek social support. So, we vent for a reason. We vent to our girlfriends, to our mother, quite often, and they've found a relationship between that behavior and the oxytocin that our body produces. Interesting. On the other hand, men find their source of stress comes most often because they have more pressure on them to take charge, and sort of like provide for their family, and almost like take charge of many different situations, no matter where it is, which can often cause tension in interpersonal situations. And if I connect the masculine hormone called testosterone, this hormone actually has a connection to an increase in high blood pressure, which is also related to a physiological response to stress. And then another interesting fact is that men are more likely than women to find various, certain situations, such as social interactions, to be stressful. So that's pretty vague, but it just helps to sort of differentiate between men and women in terms of their connections to stress. So that's pretty much it. So these next two slides just kind of remind you about the behavioral change contract that we're going to be looking at next week. So just a reminder to please print that contract off. You don't have to have it filled out. We are going to, further work on it in class, but just make sure you have a copy of it with you next Thursday. And I think that's it. Hey guys, have a great weekend, and if you have any problems with your quiz or online discussion or anything related to the content from this week, feel free to email me or post a discussion in the Q&A section. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.